The manna and the quails. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim, and on the 15th day of the second month after they had left Egypt, they came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. There in the desert they all complained to Moses and Aaron, and said to them, "We wish the Lord had killed us in Egypt. There we could at least sit down and eat meat as much as other food as we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve us all to death." The Lord said to Moses, "Now I am going to make food rain down from the sky for all of you. The people must go out every day and gather enough for that day. In this way I can test them to find out if they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day they are to bring in twice as much as usual and prepare it." Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, "This evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt. In the morning you will see the dazzling light of the Lord's presence. He has heard your complaints against him, yes, against him, because we are only carrying out his instructions." Then Moses said, "It is the Lord who will give you meat to eat in the evening, and as much bread as you want in the morning, because he has heard how much you have complained against him. When you complain against him, you are really complaining against the Lord." Moses said to Aaron, "Tell the whole community to come and stand before the Lord, because he has heard their complaints." As Aaron spoke to the whole community, they turned towards the desert, and suddenly the dazzling light of the Lord appeared in a cloud. The Lord said to Moses, "I have heard the complaints of the Israelites. Tell them that at twilight they will have meat to eat, and in the morning they will have all the bread they want. Then they will know that I, the Lord, am their God." In the evening a large flock of quails flew in, enough to cover the camp, and in the morning there was dew all around the camp. When the dew evaporated, there was something thin and flaky on the surface of the desert. It was as delicate as frost. When the Israelites saw it, they didn't know what it was and asked each other, "What is it?" Moses said to them, "This is the food that the Lord has given you to eat. The Lord has commanded that each of you is to gather as much of it as he needs, 2 liters for each member of his household." The Israelites did this. Some gathered more, others less. When they measured it, those who gathered much did not have too much, and those who gathered less did not have too little. Each had gathered just what he needed. Moses said to them, "No one is to keep any of it for tomorrow." But some of them did not listen to Moses and saved part of it. The next morning it was full of worms and smelt rotten, and Moses was angry with them. Every morning each one gathered as much as he needed, and when the sun grew hot, what was left on the ground melted. On the 6th day they gathered twice as much food, 4 liters for each person. All the leaders of the community came and told Moses about it, and he said to them, "The Lord has commanded that tomorrow is a holy day of rest, dedicated to him. Bake today what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Whatever is left should be put aside and kept for tomorrow." As Moses had commanded, They kept what was left until the next day. It did not spoil or get worms in it. Moses said, "Eat this today, because today is the Sabbath, a day of rest, dedicated to the Lord, and you will not find any food outside the camp. You must gather food for 6 days, but on the seventh day, the day of rest, there will be none." On the seventh day, some of the people went out to gather food, but they did not find any. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How much longer will you people refuse to obey my commands? Remember that I, the Lord, have given you a day of rest, and that is why on the sixth day I will always give you enough food for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where he is on the seventh day and not leave his home." So the people did not work on the seventh day. The people of Israel called the food manna. It was like a small white seed and tasted like biscuits made with honey. Moses said, "The Lord has commanded us to save some manna to be kept for our descendants, so that they can see the food which he gave us to eat in the desert when he brought us out of Egypt." Moses and Aaron, "Take a jar, put 2 liters of manna in it, and place it in the Lord's presence to be kept for our descendants." As the Lord had commanded Moses, Aaron put it in front of the covenant box so that it could be kept. The Israelites ate manna for the next 40 years until they reached the land of Canaan, where they settled. The standard dry measure then in use equaled 20 liters. Water from the rock. The whole Israelite community left the desert of Sin, moving from one place to another at the command of the Lord. They made camp at water from the rock. The whole Israelite community left the desert of Sin, moving from one place to another at the command of the Lord. They made camp at Rephidim, but there was no water there to drink. They complained to Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses answered, "Why are you complaining? Why are you putting the Lord to test?" But the people were very thirsty and continued to complain to Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt? To kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" Moses prayed earnestly to the Lord and said, "What can I do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord said to Moses, "Take some of the leaders of Israel with you and go on ahead of the people. Take along the stick with you which you struck the Nile. I will stand before you on a rock at Mount Sinai. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." Moses did so in the presence of the leaders of Israel. The place was named Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites complained and put the Lord to test when they asked, "Is the Lord with us or not?" War with the Amalekites. The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Pick out some men to go and fight the Amalekites tomorrow. I will stand on top of the hill holding the stick that God told me to carry." Joshua did as Moses commanded him and went out to fight the Amalekites, while Moses and Aaron and Hur went up to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his arms, the Israelites won. But when he put his arms down, the Amalekites started winning. When Moses' arms grew tired, Aaron and Hur brought a stone for him to sit on. While they stood beside him and held up his arms, holding them steady until the sun went down. In this way, Joshua totally defeated the Amalekites. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write an account of this victory so that it will be remembered. Tell Joshua that I will completely destroy the Amalekites." Moses built an altar and named it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, "Hold high the banner of the Lord. The Lord will continue to fight against the Amalekites forever." Jethro visits Moses. Moses' father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, heard about everything that God had done for Moses and the people of Israel when he led them out of Egypt. So he came to Moses, bringing with him Moses' wife Zipporah, who had been left behind, and Gershom and Eliezer, her 2 sons. Moses had said, "I have been a foreigner in a strange land." So he had named one son Gershom. He had also said, "The Lord of my father helped me and saved me from being killed by the king of Egypt." So he named the other son Eliezer. Jethro came with Moses' wife and her 2 sons into the desert where Moses was camped at the holy mountain. He had sent word to Moses that they were coming. So Moses went out to meet him, bowed before him, and kissed him. They asked about each other's health and then went into Moses' tent. Moses told Jethro everything that the Lord had done to the king and the people of Egypt in order to rescue the Israelites. He also told him about the hardships the people had faced on the way and how the Lord had saved them. When Jethro heard all this, he was happy and said, "Praise the Lord, who saved you from the king and the people of Egypt. Praise the Lord, who saved his people from slavery. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all the gods, because he did this when the Egyptians treated the Israelites with such contempt." Then Jethro brought an offering to be burnt whole and other sacrifices to be offered to God. And Aaron and all the leaders of Israel went with him to eat the sacred meal as an act of worship. The appointment of judges. Next day Moses was settling disputes among the people, and he was kept busy from morning till night. When Jethro saw everything that Moses had to do, he asked, "What is all this that you are doing for the people? Why are you doing this all alone, with people standing here from morning till night to consult you?" Moses answered, "I must do this because the people come to me to learn God's will. When 2 people have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide which one of them is right, and I tell them God's commands and laws." Then Jethro said, "You are not doing it the right way. You will wear yourself out and these people as well. This is too much for you to do alone. Now let me give you some good advice, and God be with you. It is right for you to represent the people before God and bring their disputes to Him. You should teach them God's commands and explain to them how they should live and what they should do. But in addition, you should choose some capable men and appoint them as leaders of the people, leaders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They must be God-fearing men who can be trusted and who cannot be bribed. Let them serve as judges for the people on a permanent basis. They can bring all the difficult cases to you, but they themselves can decide all the smaller disputes. That will make it easier for you as they share your burden. If you do this as God commands, you will not wear yourself out, and all these people can go home with their dispute settled. Moses took Jethro's advice and chose capable men from among the Israelites. He appointed them as leaders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people on a permanent basis, bringing the difficult cases to Moses, but deciding the smaller disputes themselves. Then Moses said goodbye to Jethro, and Jethro went back home. The Israelites at Mount Sinai. The people of Israel left Rephidim, and on the first day of the 3rd month after they had left Egypt, they came to the desert of Sinai. There they set up camp at the foot of Mount Sinai. And Moses went up the mountain to meet with God. The Lord called to him from the mountain and told him to say to the Israelites, Jacob's descendants, "You saw what I, the Lord, did to the Egyptians, and how I carried you as an eagle carries her young on her wings, and brought you here to me. Now, if you will obey me and keep my covenant, you will be my own people. The whole earth is mine, but you will be my chosen people, a people dedicated to me alone, and you will serve me as priests." So Moses went down and called the leaders of the people together and told them everything that the Lord had commanded him. Then all the people answered together, "We will do everything that the Lord has said." And Moses reported this to the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "I will come to you in a thick cloud, so that the people will hear me speaking with you and will believe you from now on." Moses told the Lord what the people had answered, and the Lord said to him, "Go to the people and tell them to spend today and tomorrow purifying themselves for worship. They must wash their clothes and be ready for the day after tomorrow. On that day I will come down on Mount Sinai, where all the people can see me. Mark a boundary round the mountain that the people must not cross, and tell them not to go up the mountain or even get near it. If anyone sets foot on it, he is to be put to death. He must either be stoned or shot with arrows without anyone touching him. This applies to both men and animals. They must be put to death. But when the trumpet is blown, then the people are to go up to the mountain." Then Moses came down the mountain and told the people to get ready for worship. So they washed their clothes, and Moses said to them, "Be ready by the day after tomorrow, and don't have sexual intercourse in the meantime." On the morning of the 3rd day, there was thunder and lightning. A thick cloud appeared on the mountain, and a very loud trumpet blast was heard. All the men in the camp trembled with fear. Moses led them out of the camp to meet God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. The whole of Mount Sinai was covered with smoke, because the Lord had come down on it in fire. The smoke went up like the smoke of a furnace, and all the people trembled violently. The sound of the trumpet became louder and louder. Moses spoke, and God answered him with thunder. The Lord came down on the top of Mount Sinai and called Moses to the top of the mountain. Moses went up, and the Lord said to him, "Go down and warn the people not to cross the boundary to come and look at me. If they do, many of them will die. Even the priests who come near me must purify themselves, or I will punish them." Moses said to the Lord, "The people cannot come up, because you commanded us to consider the mountain sacred and to mark a boundary round it." The Lord replied, "Go down and bring Aaron back with you, but the priests and the people must not cross the boundary to come up to me, or I will punish them." Moses then went down to the people and told them what the Lord had said. The 10 Commandments. God spoke, and these were his words. "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, where you were slaves. Worship no God but me. Do not make for yourselves images of anything in heaven or on earth, or in the water under the earth. Do not bow down to any idol or worship it, because I am the Lord your God, and I tolerate no rivals. I bring punishment on those who hate me, and on their descendants down to the 3rd and 4th generation. But I show my love to thousands of generations of those who love me and obey my laws. Do not use my name for evil purposes, for I, the Lord your God, will punish anyone who misuses my name. Observe the Sabbath and keep it holy. You have 6 days in which to do your work, but the 7th day is a day of rest dedicated to me. On that day no one is to work, neither you nor your children, your slaves, your animals, nor the foreigners who live in your country. In 6 days I, the Lord, made the earth, the sky, the sea, and everything in them. But on the 7th day I rested. That is why I, the Lord, blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. Respect your father and your mother, so that they may live a long time in the land that I am giving you. Do not commit murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not accuse anyone falsely. Do not desire another man's house. Do not desire his wife, his slaves, his cattle, his donkeys, or anything else that he owns. The people's fear. When the people heard the thunder and the trumpet blast and saw the lightning and the smoking mountain, they trembled with fear and stood a long way off. They said to Moses, "If you speak to us, we will listen. But we are afraid that if God speaks to us, we will die." Moses replied, "Don't be afraid. God has only come to test you and make you keep on obeying him, so that you will not sin." But the people continued to stand a long way off, and only Moses went near the dark cloud where God was. Laws and altars. The Lord commanded Moses to say to the Israelites, "You have seen how I, the Lord, have spoken to you from heaven. Do not make yourselves gods of silver or gold, or be worshipped in addition to me. Make an altar of earth for me, and on it sacrifice your sheep and your cattle as offerings, to be completely burnt, and as fellowship offerings. In every place that I set aside for you to worship me, I will come to you and bless you. If you make an altar of stone for me, do not build it out of cut stones, because when you use a chisel on stones, you make them unfit for my use. Do not put an altar for me with steps leading up to it. If you do, you will expose yourselves as you go up the steps. The treatment of slaves. Give the Israelites the following laws. If you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve you for 6 years. In the 7th year, he is to be set free without having to pay anything. If he was unmarried when he became your slave, he is not to take a wife with him when he leaves. But if he was married when he became your slave, he may take his wife with him. If his master gave him a wife and she bore him sons or daughters, the woman and her children belong to the master, and the man shall leave by himself. But if the slave declares that he loves his master, his wife, and his children, and does not want to be set free, then his master shall take him to the place of worship. There he is to make him stand against the door or the doorpost and pierce his ear. Then he will be his slave for life. If a man sells his daughter as a slave, she is not to be set free, as male slaves are. If she is sold to someone who intends to make her his wife, but he doesn't like her, then she is to be sold back to her father. Her master cannot sell her to foreigners because he has treated her unfairly. If a man buys a female slave to give to his son, he is to treat her like a daughter. If a man takes a second wife, he must continue to give his first wife the same amount of food and clothing and the same rights that she has had before. If he does not fulfill these duties to her, he must set her free and not receive any payment. Laws about violent acts. Whoever hits a man and kills him is to be put to death. But if it was an accident and he did not mean to kill the man, he can escape to a place which I will choose for you, and there he will be safe. But when a man gets angry and deliberately kills another man, he is to be put to death. Even if he has run to my altar for safety, whoever hits his father or his mother is to be put to death. Whoever kidnaps a man, either to sell him or to keep him as a slave, is to be put to death. Whoever curses his father or his mother is to be put to death. If there is a fight and one man hits another with a stone or with his fist, but does not kill him, he is not to be punished. If the man who was hit has to stay in bed, but later is able to get up and walk outside with the help of a stick, the man who hit him is to pay for his lost time and take care of him until he gets well. If a man takes a stick and beats a slave, whether male or female, and the slave dies on the spot, the man is to be punished. But if the slave does not die for a day or two, the master is not to be punished. The loss of his property is punishment enough. If some men are fighting and hurt a pregnant woman so that she loses her child, but she is not injured in any other way, the one who hurt her is to be fined whatever amount the woman's husband demands, subject to the approval of the judges. But if the woman herself is injured, the punishment shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn. wound for wound, bruise for bruise. If a man hits his male or female slave in the eye so that he loses the use of it, he is to free the slave as payment for the eye. If he knocks out a tooth, he is to free the slave as a payment for the tooth. The responsibility of owners. If a bull gores someone to death, it is to be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, but its owner is not to be punished. But if the bull had been in the habit of attacking people, and its owner had been warned, but did not keep it penned up, then if it gores someone to death, it is to be stoned, and its owner is to be put to death also. However, if the owner is allowed to pay a fine to save his people, he must pay the full amount required. If the bull kills a boy or a girl, the same rule applies. If the bull kills a male or female slave, its owner shall pay the owner of the slave 30 pieces of silver, and the bull shall be stoned to death. If a man takes the cover of a pit, or if he digs one and does not cover it, and a bull or a donkey falls into it, he must pay for the animal. He is to pay the money to the owner and to keep the dead animal. If one man's bull kills another man's bull, the two men shall sell the live bull and divide the money. They shall also divide up the meat from the dead bull. But if it was known that the bull had been in the habit of attacking, and its owner did not keep it penned up, he must make good the loss by giving the other man a live bull, but he may keep the dead animal. Laws about payment. If a man steals a cow or a sheep and kills it or sells it, he must pay 5 cows for 1 cow and 4 sheep for 1 sheep. He must pay for what he stole. If he owns nothing, he shall be sold as a slave to pay for what he has stolen. If the stolen animal, whether a cow, a donkey, or a sheep, is found alive in his possession, he shall pay 2 for 1. If a thief is caught breaking into a house at night and is killed, the one who killed him is not guilty of murder. But if it happens during the day, he is guilty of murder. If a man lets his animals graze in a field or a vineyard, and they stray away and eat up the crops growing in another man's field, he must make good the loss with the crops from his own fields or vineyards. If a man starts a fire in his field and it spreads through the weeds to another man's field and burns up corn that is growing or that has been cut and stacked, the one who started the fire is to pay for the damage. If a man agrees to keep another man's money or other valuables for him, and they are stolen from his house, the thief, if he is found, shall repay double. But if the thief is not found, the man who was keeping the valuables is to be brought to the place of worship, and there he must take an oath that he has not stolen the other man's property. In every case of a dispute about property, whether it involves cattle, donkeys, sheep, clothing, or any other lost object, the 2 men claiming the property shall be taken to the place of worship. The one whom God declares to be guilty shall pay double to the other man. If a man agrees to keep another man's donkey, cow, sheep, or any other animal for him, and the animal dies or is injured or is carried off in a raid, and if there was no witness, the man must go to the place of worship and take an oath that he has not stolen the other man's animal. If the animal was not stolen, the owner shall accept the loss, and the other man need not repay him. But if the animal was stolen, the man must repay the owner. If it was killed by wild animals, the man is to bring the remains as evidence. He need not pay for what has been killed by wild animals. If a man borrows an animal from another man and it is injured or dies when its owner is not present, the man must be the man must pay for it. But if that happens when the owner is present, the man need not repay. If it is a hired animal, the loss is covered by the hiring charge. Moral and religious laws. If a man seduces a virgin who is not engaged, he must pay the bride price for her and marry her. But if her father refuses to let him marry her, he must pay the father a sum of money equal to the bride price for a virgin. Put to death any woman who practices magic. Put to death any man who has sexual relations with an animal. Condemn to death anyone who offers sacrifices to any god except to me, the Lord. Do not ill-treat or oppress a foreigner. Remember that you were foreigners in Egypt. Do not ill-treat any widow or orphan. If you do, I, the Lord, will answer them when they cry out to me for help, and I will be angry and kill you in war. Your wives will become widows, and your children will be fatherless. If you lend money to any of my people who are poor, do not act like a money lender and require him to pay interest. If you take someone's cloak as a pledge that he will pay you, you must give it back to him before the sun sets, because it is the only covering he has to keep him warm. What else can he sleep in? When he cries out to me for help, I will answer him because I am merciful. Do not speak evil of God, and do not curse a leader of your people. Give me the offerings from your corn, your wine, and your olive oil when they are due. Give me your firstborn sons. Give me the firstborn of your cattle and sheep. Let the firstborn male stay with its mother for 7 days, and on the 8th day offer it to me. You are my people, so you must not eat the meat of any animal that has been killed by wild animals. Instead, give it to the dogs.